Quick question for you. How do you spell the name of those bears from the kids' book series? You know, the family of bears? The Berenstain Bears, right? E-I-N at the end? Wrong. It's actually spelled B-E-R-E-N-S-T-I-N. Berenstain with an A-I-N. Don't believe me? Go ahead, look it up. I'll wait. If you just felt a weird chill, if you are absolutely certain it was Berenstein with an E, welcome to the Mandela Effect. You're not alone. Thousands, maybe even millions of people remember it spelled that way. They're so convinced they'll argue about it. They can picture the spelling right on the cover. But every single copy ever printed says Berenstain. So, what's happening here? Are millions of people just wrong? Did we all misremember the same exact thing in the same exact way? Or is something stranger going on? Are these false memories actually proof that our reality has changed? That we've somehow shifted between parallel universes? That the very fabric of our shared existence has cracks in it? Today, we're diving deep into the bizarre world of the Mandela Effect. We'll explore the most famous examples, look at the scientific explanations, and confront the uncomfortable possibility that maybe, just maybe, our memories aren't as reliable as we think they are. Because this isn't just about misspelled book titles. This is about memory, reality, and whether we can even trust our own minds. Let's get weird. First, let's talk about where this term even comes from. It all started in 2010 when a woman named Fiona Broome was at a conference. She got into a conversation about Nelson Mandela and mentioned that she clearly remembered him dying in prison back in the 1980s. She had specific memories of the news coverage, funeral footage, even a speech from his widow. The person she was talking to looked at her like she was crazy because Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison. He was released in 1990, became president of South Africa, and lived until 2013. But here's where it gets really interesting. Fiona wasn't the only one with this false memory. As she started asking around, she found dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of people who remembered the exact same thing. They remembered Mandela dying in prison. They remembered the news reports, but it never happened. None of it. Fiona coined the term Mandela Effect to describe this phenomenon, when a large group of people collectively remembers something that never occurred, or remembers it differently than how it actually happened. And once you start looking for it, you see it everywhere. There are hundreds of examples, with thousands of people insisting they remember things one way, when reality says something completely different. Let's look at some of the most famous cases. The Berenstain Bears is a classic, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Here's another one for you. Mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? That's the famous line from Snow White, right? Nope. The actual line is magic mirror on the wall. Go watch the movie. But millions of people swear it's mirror. Mirror. Or how about this one from The Empire Strikes Back? Luke, I'm your father. Except, Darth Vader never says that. The real line is, no, I am your father. Luke's name isn't even in the sentence. But ask anyone to quote that scene and they'll probably get it wrong. Let's do a visual one. The Monopoly man, you can picture him, right? Top hat, mustache, and a monocle? Guess what? He doesn't have a monocle. He never has. Check any Monopoly board ever made. No monocle. But so many people swear they remember him wearing one. Or what about Curious George, the little monkey? He has a tail, doesn't he? No, he never did. He's technically an ape, not a monkey, and apes don't have tails. But the memory of a tail is so strong for so many people. Pokémon fans, picture Pikachu's tail. Does it have a black tip on the end? A lot of people remember it that way. But if you look at any official artwork, the tail is completely yellow with a brown patch at the base. No black tip? What about the Fruit of the Loom logo? Do you remember a cornucopia, that horn-shaped basket behind the fruit? Thousands of people are convinced it was there. But the company insists it never, ever had a cornucopia in its logo. And here's one that really messes with people. Jiffy Peanut Butter. Do you remember buying Jiffy Peanut Butter? A lot of people do, except there's no such thing. There's Jif Peanut Butter and there's Skippy Peanut Butter, but there's never been a brand called Jiffy. Yet people have vivid memories of eating it and seeing the commercials. So what in the world is going on? Alright, before we get all glitch in the matrix and start talking about parallel universes, let's explore what actual psychologists and neuroscientists have to say about this. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Human memory is terrible. I mean, it's embarrassingly bad. We like to think our memory works like a video camera. Something happens, it gets stored perfectly in our brain, and we can just hit play, and watch it back accurately whenever we want. But that's not how it works. It's not even close. Memory is reconstructive. Every single time you remember something, you aren't accessing a pristine file. You're actually rebuilding that memory from different fragments scattered around your brain. And every time you rebuild it, you can change it a little bit. You might add a detail that wasn't there, or forget one that was. You might even merge it with other memories. It's less like a video recording and more like a game of telephone with yourself. And the more times you remember something, the more distorted it can become. The renowned psychologist Elizabeth Loftus has spent her entire career studying false memories. She's proven that it is shockingly easy to implant completely false memories into people's minds. In one of her most famous experiments, she convinced a quarter of her participants that they had been lost in a shopping mall as a child, even though it never happened to them. All she did was suggest it, ask them to try and remember it, and their own brains filled in all the fake details. So, when it comes to the Mandela Effect, psychologists would say these are just common, shared false memories. And here's how they happen. First, there's confabulation. This is when your brain fills in gaps in your memory with information that seems plausible. For example, you know the Berenstain Bears are a family. And you know that many family names ending with that sound are spelled E-I-N, like Einstein, Bernstein, or Frankenstein. So your brain just autocorrects the spelling to what it thinks is more common, then there's misattribution. This is when you remember a piece of information correctly, but you attribute it to the wrong source. Maybe you're thinking of a parody of Snow White that said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall," or you're blending different versions of a story together in your head. Another big one is suggestion and social reinforcement. Once you hear someone else mention their false memory, it can actually influence and change your own. If thousands of people online are insisting that something was spelled a certain way, your brain might just adopt that memory as your own, even if it's incorrect. It's a kind of peer pressure for your brain. And finally, we have the Google effect. We've offloaded our memory to external sources, like our phones. We don't really remember facts anymore. We just remember how to look them up. This makes our actual internal memories weaker and way more prone to errors. These explanations make a lot of sense, right? They're backed by solid scientific research. Human memory is fallible, and it is completely possible for large groups of people to share the same false memories for very understandable reasons. But here's the thing that still bothers me. The rational explanations all work perfectly on paper, but they don't quite capture how the Mandela effect actually feels to the people experiencing it. Because it's not just a vague sense of confusion. People aren't saying, I think maybe it was spelled differently. No, they're saying, I am absolutely 100% certain. I can see it in my mind's eye. I remember staring at those book covers as a kid. It was Berenstein with an E. There's a level of conviction and clarity to these memories that goes way beyond normal, everyday confusion. And here's where it gets really weird. The patterns. The fact that it's not just random errors. It's very specific details that huge groups of people all seem to remember incorrectly in the exact same way. If our memories are just individually fallible, why would thousands of disconnected people all independently develop the identical false memory? Why would everyone spontaneously decide to add a monocle to the Monopoly Man? Why would we all hallucinate a cornucopia in the Fruit of the Loom logo? The psychological explanations try to account for this with concepts like collective false memory and social contagion, but for many, it still feels incomplete. Let me give you the example that really drives this home for a lot of people. A huge number of people vividly... Alright, let's dive into the deep end. This is where things get wild. These are the theories that science doesn't really back up, but they are just too fascinating to ignore. First up, the big one, parallel universes. The idea here is that the Mandela effect happens because some of us have somehow slipped between alternate realities. Imagine in Universe A, it was always the Berenstain Bears, and Nelson Mandela died in prison. But here in Universe B, it's Berenstain and Mandela lived a long life. For some unknown reason, maybe quantum fluctuations, maybe our timelines merged, we've shifted from A to B. Most people's memories updated to match this new reality. But for a few of us, our brains held onto the memories from the old timeline. That's why there's this weird conflict between what we remember and what's real now. Is there any proof? Well, quantum mechanics does have this many worlds interpretation, which suggests that every possible outcome of a quantum event creates a new, branching universe. But here's the catch. Even if parallel universes are real, there's no known way for our consciousness to just hop between them and keep our old memories. And honestly, why would reality shift for something as minor as the spelling of a children's book? Theory number 2. We're living in a simulation, and these are just glitches in the matrix. If our entire reality is a super advanced computer program, like some physicists and philosophers actually speculate, then the Mandela Effect could just be software updates. Imagine the programmers deciding to change a small detail. They retroactively update the spelling of Berenstain Bears in the source code. For most of us, our memories get updated automatically, but for some, our mental cache still has the old version. It's a cool idea, and the simulation hypothesis is taken seriously in some circles, but we can't test it. It's unfalsifiable, which makes it more of a philosophical puzzle than a scientific theory. Next, theory number 3, time travel. What if someone's zipping through time, making tiny changes? These changes then create ripples that alter our present. We remember the original timeline, but we're living in the new, altered one. This could explain why the changes are so small and seemingly random. Maybe time travelers are trying to avoid major paradoxes but accidentally cause these little inconsistencies. Again, zero evidence, but it's a fun thought experiment, right? And theory number 4, collective consciousness. This one gets a bit metaphysical. The idea is that all human minds are connected on some quantum level. If enough people believe something with enough conviction, that collective belief could actually influence or even change reality itself. This has no scientific support, but it's an intriguing thought. What if reality is more flexible than we think and our shared consciousness can subtly shape it? Now we need to talk about the elephant in the room. The internet. Honestly, the Mandela Effect as we know, it probably wouldn't even be a thing without the web. Think about it. Before the internet, if you misremembered a detail, you'd probably just shrug it off. Maybe you'd ask a friend. They'd correct you, and that would be it. But today? If you think something is spelled a certain way, you can go online and instantly find thousands of other people who remember it the exact same wrong way. That social validation is incredibly powerful. It reinforces your false memory, making you feel certain that you're right and reality is wrong. Reddit threads, YouTube videos, blogs, they all act like echo chambers, spreading and strengthening these shared misrememberings. The phenomenon feeds itself. There's also something psychologists call memory conformity, or the social contagion of memory. If you read a really convincing post from someone detailing their false memory asterisk before asterisk, you try to recall it yourself, you might unconsciously adopt their memory as your own. Your brain gets tricked into thinking you experienced it too. So the internet doesn't necessarily create the false memories, but it acts like a massive amplifier. It takes a common psychological quirk, spreads it globally, and validates it on a massive scale. This makes it really hard to figure out if the Mandela Effect is just a fascinating quirk of human psychology or a genuine crack in the fabric of reality. Here's what bothers me most about the Mandela Effect. It forces us to confront how unreliable our own memories are. Think about it. We base our entire sense of identity and reality on memory. You know who you are because you remember your past. You understand the world because you remember what you've learned. Memory is the foundation of everything. But the Mandela Effect demonstrates that memory is fundamentally untrustworthy. Not just occasionally wrong, but systematically, consistently untrustworthy. If thousands of people can confidently remember a movie that never existed, what else might we be wrong about? How many of your childhood memories are accurate? How many are reconstructed, distorted, or completely false? There was a famous psychological study where researchers interviewed people about their memories of the Challenger space shuttle explosion. Shortly after the event in 1986, people wrote down where they were and what they were doing when they heard the news. Years later, researchers asked the same people to recall those memories. The vast majority had significantly different memories than what they'd originally written, but they were absolutely confident in their false memories. Even when shown their original written accounts, many refused to believe they'd remembered it wrong. That's terrifying. Our memories can be completely wrong. And we'll never know it because our confidence in those memories doesn't correlate with their accuracy. The Mandela Effect is just making this problem visible on a mass scale. So maybe the question isn't, are we shifting between parallel universes? Maybe the real question is, How much of what we remember is actually real? So what's the actual answer? Collective false memory or cracks in reality? Honestly, it's probably collective false memory. The psychological explanations are solid, well-researched, and don't require us to invoke untestable theories about parallel universes or simulation glitches. Human memory is reconstructive, fallible, and easily influenced. Groups of people can share false memories through common cognitive biases and social reinforcement. The internet amplifies this effect by connecting people with similar false memories and validating those memories through community. That's the rational, scientific explanation. And it's almost certainly correct. But here's the thing. Even if it's just psychology, that doesn't make it less profound or interesting. The fact that our brains can do this, create vivid, detailed, confident memories of things that never happened, is genuinely remarkable and unsettling. It reveals something fundamental about how consciousness works. Reality, as we experience it, is constructed by our brains. It's not objective. It's not a perfect recording. It's an interpretation constantly being rebuilt and revised. And sometimes that interpretation is wrong. Sometimes entire communities share the same wrong interpretation. And when that happens, it feels like reality itself has cracked. Maybe that feeling is the real Mandela Effect. Not evidence of parallel universes, but evidence of how fragile our grasp on reality actually is. Alright, let's bring this all together. The Mandela Effect is the phenomenon where large groups of people share false memories of the same events, often with surprising conviction and specificity. From the spelling of children's book titles to famous movie quotes to memories of events that never happened. Science offers clear explanations. Memory is reconstructive and fallible. Cognitive biases lead to predictable errors. Social reinforcement spreads and validates false memories. The internet amplifies all of these effects. These explanations are almost certainly correct. We're not shifting between parallel universes. Reality isn't being edited by time travelers or simulation programmers. We're just experiencing the natural, albeit disturbing, limitations of human memory. But acknowledging the scientific